Shall turn away, ladies, before we contaminate it.
Skin color prejudice? That's so pathetic, it's almost quaint.
It ain't quaint.
Welcome, friends. We're back talking Doctor Who this week, Season 1, Episode 5, I guess we're calling it. This one is entitled Dot and Bubble. Now, there will be spoilers ahead. If those aren't for you, consider this your last warning. Let's crack on with the show. So right up front, I have to say this is probably going to be an exceptionally short video because I don't think I have all that much to discuss or add to the conversation. For an episode that was so apparently packed with messaging and theming and just all sorts of discourse going on around it, I don't think there was all that much substance when you really boil down this episode. Now, there was a lot of talk out there that this was very influenced by, or at least reminiscent of, the Orville and Black Mirror episodes, and while that's true, I definitely see that. It also seems like it was pulling on an older Sliders episode, as well as maybe a little bit of Wall-E, plus obviously all the real-world things about social media, your sphere of influence, echo chambers. It really seemed like that was what they were trying to do, just through that quirky kind of pseudo-evolution that Doctor Who tends to do. Now, this definitely felt like it would fit in with an early RTD era episode, like maybe late Eccleston or early Tennant, and apparently this was written by RTD for early Stephen Moffat era, so it was supposed to be 11th Doctor and Amy Pond, which makes me question how many changes they had to make to the story, because obviously the intended purpose of this episode, at least as it stands, is to be a sort of a racist storyline, or to show the dangers of racism and all of that stuff. And that wouldn't necessarily have worked, at least as well, with Matt Smith without some serious tweaking. So I have to imagine it was definitely retooled, probably to add some meta commentary for what they knew was going to be encountered when they casted Ncuti as the next Doctor. So it definitely seems like there was some reworking of this episode. Now, there were things in it that I did enjoy. I liked the aesthetics of the whole bubble around the head. That looked pretty good. I liked the slug monsters. That was very kind of like I said, it felt like kind of like Slovene era type stuff, something like that. All of that stuff was pretty good, and I liked the acting by whoever played Lindy. She was fairly hateable, but you could also kind of find yourself rooting for her in certain situations, which makes the grand reveal at the end even better, because you didn't like her to begin with, and you realize you weren't supposed to like her. So I definitely like that they weren't trying to make her into some sort of heroic character that it was your fault not to like. No, there was definitely something underlying in her personality the entire time, which made her an unlikable person. That was good. But the entire episode was very hollow, and it felt like a good setup. It felt like this was maybe the first half of a good episode. The elements within it were kind of building to something that never came. And I know there's probably some sort of commentary out there that this was, that's the point, because that was the whole, being cut off at the knees at the end is how racism can actually affect you. So if that's the case, I definitely think it made its point, but making a point doesn't make for a satisfying or an interesting conclusion to an episode. So while the elements definitely were there for a really good episode, it definitely felt like it fell a bit flat as far as a lot of the world building components. Like, how did the slugs get there? We were told eventually that the AI was the real culprit here, that by listening to these vain, vapid people day after day after day, it developed a hatred for them. I think it was actually something a little deeper than that. Like, if you train AI, we're finding this in our own world with some of the AI that's been created, because the people that it's interacting with, what it's learning from, are horrible, awful, racist people. It is itself becoming that way. So all of the darkness and barely veiled hatred that exists in these people was also being fed into the AI. It was learning from them, and it inevitably turned that hatred on the horrible organic people that it was learning from to begin with. So you are the creator of your own monster, that sort of thing. But that wasn't the way the story was told. I'm putting that on it because personally, in my mind, that makes it a little bit more interesting and a little bit better. What is this place? It wasn't really set up. It was kind of thrown away in a few lines. What was the home world? Who are these people? What was going on with this very, very, well-protected little bubble city on this planet? That wasn't really gone into. It was so well-protected the Doctor wasn't even able to enter it, which makes very little sense if this was really only supposed to be this colony for some self-obsessed bloggers to kind of play around on the internet. None of that really was well explored, well explained, which is why I felt like this was just getting started when it came crashing down at the end. It definitely felt like that first escape moment was just leading up to something we never got to see because they wanted to leave us with that powerful message at the end. But I don't think everything around it really built up to that well enough to feel like this episode was more than just a one-trick pony, I guess, if that makes any sense. And like I've said in a couple of my other Doctor Who reviews, they're definitely leading up to this grand reveal at the end of the season. For instance, Ruby Sunday's name definitely fit right in with all of these kind of odd screen names these people had. So I don't know if that's supposed to tie into anything larger. But as I've said before in some of my Doctor Who reviews for this season, if there's a grand unifying revelation at the end of the season that makes some things in this episode make a little bit more sense, that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that the episode has to do its own thing and stand on its own legs without that revelation at the end. And I don't think this episode really stood on its own feet for the most part. There were some elements in there, I just don't think it came together in the way that they were hoping. But what are your thoughts? Do you think that this really hit home and that the message really came through clearly? Did you enjoy the ride until you got there? Or are you like me and did you feel like it was a bit hollow and could have done more to really beef up that story so that the hit at the end really felt more impactful? Whatever you thought, leave all that down below. Like, share, subscribe to all those YouTube things. And until next time...
Bow down. Dog.